INFJs, does it sometimes feel like you're drained or stuck when it comes to making decisions? That it doesn't matter how big or small the decision is, it feels like this giant burden that you just do not have the mental space for? If this is something that you've experienced, which it probably is and has been, I know it has been for me many times, this usually means that you are caught in sensory overload. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Not specifically sensory overload and what it is, but how it impacts our ability to make decisions. And it's super interesting because I did not know there was a connection to this years ago. And when I discovered this connection, it all made sense. And it was very helpful for me. So if it's helpful for me, I think it will be helpful for other INFJs. So that's what we're talking about today. I think it'll be interesting. If you haven't met before, my name's Trina Brunel. I'm an INFJ and I'm also autistic. I love coming on here and sharing things that I have discovered, that I have used to help me have an easier life so that I could help other fellow INFJs and autistic INFJs feel seen, heard, understood, and less alone, because that would have made a huge difference for me years ago. So that's what I like to do. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you find it helpful. If you're returning, I'm glad you came back. I am so grateful for you all. Before we get going, though, I want to let you know if you have a topic that you want like me to discuss, talk about, whatever, feel free to put it in the comments below or email me. I'll put my email address in the description of this video. I love hearing from my viewers. It totally makes my day. So feel free to email me with some thoughts or a topic that you'd like me to discuss. All right. So let's get into this. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Everyone's time is precious and I tend to ramble and my videos get longer than I really want them to be. So recognizing that there is a connection between our ability to make decisions and our emotions is so important. I did not know this. I had mentioned this earlier. This was discovered back, I think it was like mid 20th century. I can't remember the exact year, but it was when they were doing lobotomies for mental illness. They found that they'd do a lobotomy on somebody and their ability to make decisions was pretty much gone. They would just, almost like they had no care left, right? I won't get into detail. There's movies. I'm sure that you've seen movies. I think one movie on this topic, sorry, you probably just heard the door close. My son came in. I think one movie on this topic was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if I'm not mistaken. I found it really interesting reading about lobotomies. Anyway, it wasn't, though, research as to why this was going on until the 80s. And I can't remember the doctor's name off the top of my head, but they discovered that the damage to the prefrontal cortex can severely impair a person's decision-making abilities, right? So the prefrontal cortex, I'm not really going to get into the whole science because I'm not like a brain expert, but I do know that the prefrontal cortex isn't our main emotion center, our main emotional center. It's not, but it does play a crucial role in regulating our emotions, decision making, and then other higher cognitive functions that I won't get into. So when we experience sensory overload, it puts our brain in fight or flight response, right? Which causes stress and anxiety to raise. I'm sure you've experienced that when, like for me, it's standing in one example off the top of my head is if I'm going grocery shopping. I hate grocery shopping with a passion. I despise it. If I'm going grocery shopping, I have to make sure that store is not busy, because if I'm in a busy supermarket with people talking and moving around and kids running around and announcements coming over the speaker, and maybe there's music playing, and then the tellers, they usually beep when they scan, and it's just too much for me and I feel like I'm going to explode. It's just way too much. That sensory overload. I feel frustrated, I feel on edge, all of that. When this happens, that's the flight or fight response. When this happens, our prefrontal cortex struggles to function, basically. In a nutshell, it struggles to function. So our ability to focus and think clearly becomes very difficult, if not impaired, right? So this is where sensory overload triggers that. For an INFJ who we rely very heavily on our emotions, this becomes very draining. So again, back to my supermarket example, it's exhausting. Right? You're in a grocery store and it's busy and you're just, for me, I feel on edge, like I'm going to explode, and I probably even clench my fists. I'll have to I'll have to pay attention, but usually when I'm upset or something's really bugging me, my fists will get really, really tight, right, like white knuckled tight. And then afterwards, I'm exhausted, like just blah. I call it my brain is just mush, right? That is emotional exhaustion. So this makes it very difficult when we're in emotional exhaustion from that. It makes it very difficult to connect into our decision-making process, right? Because our prefrontal cortex, it's not functioning like it should. So this is when we feel stuck or indecisive or frustrated because we just can't access those emotions clearly. And I know for me now, thinking back, because when I read about this, I started to pay attention, and that's exactly what would happen. Is when I was in a state like that, pretty much for the rest of the day, decisions were very, very difficult for me. They were really hard. Like I was very indecisive. I would overthink. I would overanalyze the smallest decision. Like making supper. Like what am I going to make my family for supper became like a tiny decision. It's really not that big of a decision, right? There's lots to choose from. I have lots in the cupboard. But for me, it was like this mountain of a decision when I got like that. So it's not just about feeling the overwhelm, the edginess. It's much deeper. There's much more going on inside of us. And I can think back, because I think I spent many years in emotional overwhelm or sensory overload, because I didn't know it was a thing, to be honest with you. And I actually didn't know it was a thing until probably my late 30s. And a job that I had put me in complete sensory overload all the time, just because there was a lot going on. It was a busy place. I'm not going to get into the detail, right? And I had a really hard time making decisions. There's a whole stretch of quite a few years, probably like 7 or 8 years, where I had such a struggle with decisions. I was a single mom too at the time, and I know a lot of things that came up, I would overthink, I would overanalyze, and it just kept going around and around in a circle, and I didn't realize what was going on, and I didn't even know that this was going on until one day I'm like, why can't I make decisions? Like, what is wrong with me? I just can't decide. I don't even want to face this. And that's when I started researching, and I'm like, oh, well, this is what's going on. I need to calm down, step back. I need to switch some things up in my life and calm this sensory overload going on, right? And it can come from a number of things. It doesn't have to be just your environment. It can come from the clothes that you're wearing, the lights that are above you. Like some people, especially INFJs, were very sensitive to the lights. I have a ring light. You can probably see the reflection in my glasses, and it actually really bothers me. And I was warned. A fellow INFJ friend of mine, when I told him that I ordered this, he's like, you're going to hate it. INFJs don't like ring lights. I'm like, oh, I know that. And he's so right. I don't like it. It drives me up the wall, but I'm okay. For a few minutes that I do this, I'm okay, and I love doing these videos. So remember, be gentle with yourself and recognize the signs so that you can protect your emotional energy, so that you can approach your decisions at your best, right? A clear and more grounded mindset. And they're not going to seem like these mountain decisions that you have to make and everything's closing in on you and it's just too much and you just want to climb into your bed and pull the blankets over your head and that's where you want to stay petting your dog for the rest of your life. Because I've been there. I've wanted to do that on a regular basis for a number of years and it's not fun. I hope this was an informative video. I hope it helped you, gave you something to think about, something to consider. If you like this video, please give me the thumbs up. I invite you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And I also invite you to share this. The more it's shared, the more INFJs I get to help, and that's really what it's all about. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, you are good enough just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. I will talk to you very soon with another video. Bye for now.